Eva and Will, come on down. I could have so been Bob Barker back in the day, don't you think? So, what kind of chores do you guys got to do? Do you have to make your bed? Do you make your bed? How about you, Will? Anything you have to do? Take out the garbage? Little things like that, right? Well, I got something for you. This today only. It is around to it. Around to it. Your mom says, Eva, did you make your bed? I'll get around to it. Get it? Well, you can take out the garbage? I'll get around to it. This gets you out of anything, except if you're married to my wife. And I say, I'll get around to it, and she knows what around to it is. That's why she made this around to it. So, there's like people in life who they hear about Jesus all their life. Sunday school, VBS, maybe in the summer during Child Evangelism Fellowship. They hear about Jesus. And they hear about him, and they hear about him. And they're like, I'll get around to it. I'll trust Jesus someday. You know what? When we use the around to it, it never happens. Today is the day you make your bed. Today is the day you take off the garbage. Today is the day you finally hang up all your shirts in your closet that you threw on the floor. Or that would actually be me. But anyway, him too? Hey, we're in good company, right? Will and I are exactly alike. We throw our shirts in the closet on the floor. But anyway, don't use around to it anymore. Trust Jesus today, because tomorrow may never come. Anyway, have fun in children's church. Does anybody want the round to it? Take it home? Anybody here want a round to it? Nolan, Phineas? You're like, my mom's going to be so mad. Well, I'm just like, anybody online want a round to it? Let me know. For $9.99. Enough with the sales talk. Actually, I'm going to put on my cheaters now. My eyes are really good. By the way, I can see everybody. I mean, some of you are looking a lot younger than I thought you looked. But if I look up really close, I can't read a thing. So I'm probably going to need bifocals. Oh, that's much better. So you are being led right now, whether you admit it or not. But let me ask it this way, and honestly, don't answer out loud, but answer inside. Whose voice carried the most weight in your life this week? Jesus or your fear? When pressure hits, who do you listen to? The shepherd or the loudest voice in your mind? What shaped your thinking this week? Scripture or the steady stream of news, opinions, and posts? And what set the tone of your heart? The peace of Christ or the anxiety and outrage that surrounds us? If someone watched the last 7 days of your life, think about it. This is kind of scary. They watched your schedule, your spending, your words, your habits that happen behind closed doors. What would they say? Would they say that person is following Jesus, or that person is being led by something else? And here's the uncomfortable truth. Everyone follows someone. The question isn't, are you being led? It's by whom. That's why John 10 cuts so deep. Jesus doesn't offer a slogan. He offers a test. In a world full of voices, the true flock is revealed by the voice they recognize and follow. And then he makes it unmistakably clear. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. So this passage isn't really asking, do you like Jesus? It's asking something far more searching. Who are you actually following? With that, let's read John 10, 1 through 6. Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls the sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling him. Picture this: a small Jewish village, not wide open fields yet. Most families owned a few sheep, and at night those sheep were kept in stone courtyards connected to the homes. But no single family had enough sheep to hire their own shepherd. So several families would go in together and have a shepherd. It could have been a son, a daughter, or even a hired worker. Early in the morning, the shepherd would gather the sheep. He wasn't sneaking in. He was known. The gatekeeper recognized him and opened the gate. That's the key point. The true shepherd enters the right way, out in the open, in broad daylight, with nothing to hide. Now contrast the thief and the robber. If you were a thief, how would you get into a house? How would you get to the sheep? You wouldn't go through the front door because it's locked. The gatekeeper would not let you in. So you had to climb over a wall that was 6.5 feet high. In other words, their method exposed their motives. You don't scale walls unless you're hiding something. In Jesus' setting, shepherd was a loaded leadership word. Kings, prophets, religious rulers. So Jesus' imagery lands as an indictment. The leaders who just threw out the man healed in John 9 have acted like trespassers, not shepherds. They are inside the religious system, but they are not entering God's work in the way God intends, open, truthful, with care for the sheep. And it's not just unauthorized entry. Even if a thief got into the courtyard, he still truly couldn't lead the sheep. False shepherds don't lead. They steal, they scatter, and they exploit. So in a village, this is also very interesting. The shepherd doesn't drive sheep from behind like a cattleman. He leads from the front. When the courtyard doors opens, he calls, and the sheep respond. This is intimate relational work. And ancient hearers knew that sheep learn a familiar voice. And some shepherds even name their sheep. Jesus leans into that. He calls his own sheep by name. That detail is huge in their world. Sheep may just be dumb animals to the outsiders, but a true shepherd, he knows which sheep is spooked as shadows, which one limps, and which one lags. The shepherd's authority is not merely positional, it's relational. He belongs in that courtyard because he belongs to those sheep. He is responsible for them, and they know him. In the immediate context of John 9, this is personal. The Pharisees, they didn't treat the blind man like a person. They treated him like a case, a problem, a threat to their system. They threw him out. Jesus treated him as a person, found him, spoke with him, received him. And the ancient Jews' knowing isn't mere information. It implies a bond and a loyalty. That's the kind of shepherd Jesus is hinting at from the start. So in the morning, picture this, multiple homes contribute their sheep, and more than one set of animals could be nearby. Yet sheep are not as clueless as people assume. They safely depend on a basic ability, recognize the right voice. The shepherd calls, the sheep listen. And they follow him out through the narrow village streets into the open pasture. A stranger can shout all he wants. I'm sure you've noticed that before. You see somebody else's dog or cat, and you call their name, and they don't listen. But that owner comes by, and boom, the dog, cat, duck respond. This was incredibly realistic. The sheep, if sheep was moved to a real owner, it could experience distress for many days because the voice was unfamiliar. So it might even run away. That's the picture. The sheep may desperately want out, but they won't trade safety for speed. They'd rather hesitate than follow the wrong voice. So when Jesus says they will never follow a stranger, he's describing survival instincts. In their world, discernment wasn't spiritual elitism. It was daily protection. Again, John 9 is right behind it. The formerly blind man refused the Pharisees' pressure and followed Jesus. The Pharisees' rejection of Jesus and their inability to hear what he's saying in this figure of speech functions as a sign. They are not acting like sheep who knows the shepherd's voice. In ancient time, the flock is identified not by branding, not by location, not by crowd size, but by who they listen to when voices compete. So when my son Noah was little, something happened that every parent dreads. He wandered off. And this was in the Mall of America. Denise was absolutely frantic, like any mom would be. But Noah did something I still remember. He stayed calm, found a police officer, and told them that he was lost. And not long after that, mom and son were reunited. Here's what struck me later. In a place where 1,000 voices, Noah didn't just listen to any voice. He went to someone with authority, someone who could actually help. And that's where John 10 hits us. We live in a world that is basically the Mall of America for the soul. Noise, crowds, opinions, feeds, outrage, trends, spiritual advice everywhere. You are going to hear voices. The question isn't whether you'll hear them. The question is, when you're disorientated, when you're afraid, when you're not sure what's true, whose voice do you trust? And where do you go for safety? In John 10, Jesus doesn't offer a suggestion. He makes a claim. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. Not, here's a helpful principle, pick a shepherd. He says, I am. So as we open John 10, 7 to 18, here's what we're really asking. Are we merely people who like Jesus? Or are we the ones who actually recognize his voice and come to him for safety and life? Let's read John 10:7-18. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me as thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cared nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep, I have other sheep that are not of my own sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. This idea about the gate to the ancient hearers wasn't just for decoration or something. It was a difference between safe and exposed. Out in the open country, shepherds would gather sheep at night in a rough stone enclosure. The walls might be topped with thorns to keep predators out, but the most vulnerable point was always the opening. And in many settings, the shepherd himself would secure that entrance, sleeping there, staying alert, so nothing dangerous got in and nothing valuable slipped out. So when Jesus says, I am the gate for the sheep, he's not giving a vague spiritual metaphor. He is claiming to be the authorized access point to protection and provision. In the earlier image, the shepherd entered through the door legitimately. Whoever enters through me will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. In their world, that meant you're secure at night and you're led to food and water by day. You are not trapped. You're protected and provided for. And in the immediate context, it also lands as a direct contrast to what the Pharisees had just done to the healed man in John 9. They threw him out. Jesus is saying, I'm not the kind of leader who throws people out and makes them vulnerable. I am the entry into the place of safety. And ancient people, they didn't romanticize sheep and shepherding. They knew the threats were real. Thieves, bandits, predators, loss could happen really fast. So Jesus uses stark language: steal, kill, destroy. That's what happens when the wrong leader gets access to the flock. It's not merely that they are unauthorized, it's that their pressure ends in harm. When Jesus says, all who came are thieves and robbers, his hearers would immediately think of the prophetic tradition condemning Israel's corrupt shepherds, leaders who took advantage of the flock rather than feeding it. In the story flow of John, these thieves are not faithful servants of God in Israel's past, but the current leaders who refuse to witness to Jesus and abuse the weak are the same kind of leaders, thieves and robbers. Then comes a contrast that would hit them like a hammer. The thief's coming is ongoing reality. Threats keep showing up. But Jesus has come in a decisive way to bring life, and not bare survival, but abundant life. Abundance in their world isn't luxury branding. It's a shepherd ensuring the sheep are safe, fed, and whole. And in John's gospel, it includes a restored community and relationship with God. The healed man didn't just receive sight, he gained a new place with Jesus and a new belonging. When Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, the word good means exemplary, noble, true, the model. In other words, this is what shepherding is supposed to look like. Ancient hearers would immediately understand the contrast Jesus draws. A hired hand is paid to be there. He's near the sheep, but they are not truly his. When danger comes, especially a wolf, the hired hand's instinct is to run. And the result isn't just vulnerability, it's scattering. A flock without a shepherd becomes a frightened, fragmented target. Jesus is saying false leadership doesn't just fail to help, it actually creates conditions for destruction. The hired hand's abandonment is what allows the wolf to attack and scatter. But the good shepherd is different. He does what no one expects. He lays down his life for the sheep. Ancient people knew shepherds might risk injury, but a shepherd actually died for a sheep? Come on. Jesus intentionally stretches the image beyond normal limits by telling them something shocking about his messiahship. He won't save the flock by power plays. He will save it by self-giving, by dying on a cross. So when Jesus speaks of knowing the sheep, ancient listeners, especially those shaped by Scripture, would hear more than information. Know is a covenant language, relational, loyal, personal. Jesus is describing a bond like this. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Then he dares to compare it to the intimacy between father and son. That is staggering. He's claiming that the relationship between Jesus and his people isn't merely just teacher-student. It's family, covenant close. Then he expands the horizon. I have other sheep. I must bring them in also. In the prophets, the good shepherd gathers scattered Israel. Jesus claims he will gather beyond Israel, creating one flock under one shepherd. For an ancient Jewish audience, this is huge. It means God's saving work in the Messiah won't be just for one people. The mark of his flock will be hearing his voice, whether Jews, Samaritan, or Gentile. Do you know what that means? It means salvation is available to the whole entire world. It doesn't mean the whole entire world is going to accept Jesus. It just means it's available. But finally, Jesus makes it clear that his death is not a forced tragedy. In their world, leaders were often removed by enemies. Jesus is saying something different. He says, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. That is a claim of divine authority. The shepherd is not a victim. Jesus chose the cross. And he will rise again because the Father has given this charge. So for the ancient people, This section announces the flock is safe, not because the sheep are strong, but because the shepherd is the gate, the provider, and the savior. And he will secure his people through a love that costs him everything. Think about people who run towards danger when everyone else is running away. First responders, firefighters, law enforcement, ER team, ICU nurses. When the call comes in, they don't get to stay at safe distance and offer advice. They step into the smoke, into the wreckage, into the trauma. They put themselves between someone's worst day and the possibility of life. And what's striking is this. In those moments, you can tell the difference between someone who's just clocking hours and someone who sees it as a calling. Because when it gets risky, when it costs sleep, comfort, safety, sometimes even their own health, some still show up. They don't do it because it's easy. They do it because lives are on the line. That's the weight behind what Jesus says in John 10:7-18. He isn't offering a sentimental picture. He's making a claim that collides with our world. Because our culture will often tolerate Jesus the example, a wise teacher, a spiritual guide, a symbol of kindness, but it resists Jesus as the gate. The moment Jesus says, I am the gate, he's not saying, here's the helpful path. He's saying, this is the way into safety. This is the only way to salvation, into life with God. That really confronts modern instincts to say that Jesus is just inspirational, but not authoritative. It also confronts the kind of leadership we're used to. We live in a time when people are exhausted by leaders who use people. Leaders who protect their own platform, save their reputation, and disappear when it gets costly. Jesus names that kind of leadership the hired hand, who runs when the wolf comes. He's near the sheep when it's easy, but when it's dangerous, the sheep find out they were never truly his. And the result is what wolves always want. If you were a wolf and you wanted sheep, you would love scattering, fear. It's like mass panic. A scattered flock is easy to destroy. Then Jesus steps into that and says, I'm not like that. I am the gate. I stand at the point of danger. I am the good shepherd, and I don't run. And here's the big gun difference. Jesus doesn't risk himself like a rescuer. He tells you the cost up front. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Lots of voices promise they want your good. Few will bleed for it. But Jesus isn't marketing comfort. He's announcing rescue. He doesn't merely teach love, he enacts it. Think about that. It's easy to teach something, but to do it is another thing. And Jesus showed love when he died on that cross while we were still sinners. My wife said it really easy this week. She said, and I quote, we are terrible people, but God still loves us. That Christ still died for us when we were terrible. That is love. So John 10:7-18 matters right now because it asks a question our age can't avoid. When wolves come, when thieves manipulate, when voices compete, who will actually stand between you and death? And Jesus answers, I will. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I laid down my life that they may have life. So Jesus has made his claim as clearly as it can be made. He is the gate. He is the good shepherd, the one who doesn't run, the one who lays down his life so his sheep can live. But that kind of claim never lands in a neutral way. When Jesus speaks like this, people just can't shrug off and move on. His words and his works press everyone to a verdict. Who is he? And what do we want to do with him? Will we listen or not? So watch what happens next in the crowd. Let's read John 10:19-21. The Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, "He is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him?" But others said, "These are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?" To the first century listeners, John 10:7-18 was not mild encouragement. They were explosive. He didn't merely say God is like a shepherd. He says, "I am the gate, I am the good shepherd." That is identity language, authority language. Because of the way John's gospel uses "I am," it reverberates with divine claims. So the narrator says, the Jews were again divided. That again matters. This is a repeated pattern throughout the tabernacle cycles. Jesus' presence keeps cutting the crowd to a response. In their world, division wasn't an unfortunate side effect. It was an inevitable result of someone claiming to be the true shepherd of God's flock. If he is truly the gate, then he separates inside and outside. If he is truly the shepherd, then he distinguishes true voices from false ones. Neutrality collapses. Some respond with a familiar charge. He is a demon. He is out of his mind. In the ancient world, if you said something like that, that was a way to dismiss a teacher who threatened your worldview or authority. Calling Jesus demon didn't require careful engagement with his words. It was an intellectual escape hatch. If he's crazy, you don't have to reckon with him. And now the practical conclusion they push, why listen to him? That's the real move for the Pharisees. The debate is not academic. It's about whether Jesus will be granted a hearing, whether his voice will be treated as a shepherd or a stranger voice. Refusing to listen was a way to protect themselves from the implications of his claim. But like I said, you can sit on that train track and you can tell me no train's coming through this town, but I guarantee you will get hit by a train, because I hear that whistle way too many times during the day. So another group answers, but with a blunt line of reasoning. These are not the sayings of a demon-possessed man. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? The question drops right back to John 9. The healed man is still a test case. In their minds, demons destroy, Jesus restores. Demons darken, Jesus gives sight. The crowd is doing in John what it invites readers to do now. Evaluate Jesus by both words and deeds. His speech and his signs, they stick together. That's why the reference to blind is so pointed. It's plural. It echoes the deeper issue Jesus exposes in 9:39-41. Physical blindness was healed, but willful spiritual blindness remains. The question hanging over the scene is not only can a demon do this, but also if Jesus opens blind eyes, he can heal their blindness too, if they would listen. So the ancient people, these verses are the moment the masks come off. Jesus has spoken plainly about who he is. The crowd must choose what category to put him into. And the deciding factor is whether they will actually listen to his voice in light of his works. One of the clearest signs of how divided we are today isn't about what we argue about, it's how we listen. The same event happens in two places, and the reaction can be completely different. In one setting, it passes without much notice. In another, it becomes a flashpoint. Emotions rise, lines are drawn, and people stop listening. Because when something touches identity, fear, safety, and control, we don't just merely observe it, we interpret it. We assign motives. We decide who's righteous and who's dangerous. And once we make that judgment, it quickly determines what voices we're willing or unwilling to hear. One side says, don't listen, this is wrong. Another says, no, this is necessary. Same country, same movement, radically different judgments. That's exactly the dynamic John records in verses 19 to 21. After Jesus says, I am the gate, I am the good shepherd, John tells us the people were divided again. Some don't argue with him, they label him. He has a demon, he's out of his mind. And then comes the real move. Why listen to Jesus? That's just not disagreement, that's dismissal. It's a way of avoiding the implications of what he's saying. But others in the crowds do something simple and honest. They look at the evidence and ask, these aren't the works of a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? In other words, his works don't match the accusation. His words and deeds belong together. Because we still live in a world of verdicts and labels. People will do almost anything to keep Jesus manageable. Admire him, reduce him, rename him, even mock him. They don't deal with him as a living shepherd who has authority. But John 10 won't let you keep him in the background. His words and his works force a decision. So here's where the text leaves us. The question is not merely, what's your opinion of Jesus? The question is, will you listen? Really listen. When his voice confronts your assumptions and his works challenge your labels. Because when Jesus speaks, you can't sit on the fence. It divides. And every one of us has to answer, who is Jesus and why listen to him? John 10 leaves us with a simple and terrifying personal reality. There are many voices. There is one shepherd, and the flock is revealed by who they listen to. Jesus isn't asking for some polite opinion. He's not offering to be added to your life as spiritual background music. He stands in the middle of this chapter and says it plainly, I am the gate. Meaning life with God. Now listen really closely. Life with God isn't accessed through effort, tradition, or religious performance. You don't climb in over the wall. You don't sneak in on your own terms. You come through Jesus or you don't come at all. I am the good shepherd, meaning he doesn't use the sheep. He doesn't abandon the sheep. He doesn't run when danger shows up. He steps into harm's way. He lays down his life to rescue his flock. He doesn't just call for you. He paid for you. Get it? He paid for your sins. You just got arrested for robbing the Chadwick Bank. And Jesus paid for that. Well, actually, if you actually do that, you're probably going to pay for a prison term. But your soul will be saved because Jesus paid for every terrible thing you've done in your life. He doesn't just lead you, he saves you. But the question remains, are you listening? Because the danger isn't only the wolves out there. The danger is what happens when we keep Jesus at a distance. When we rename him to fit our preferences. When we label him so we don't have to obey him. When we treat him as inspiring but not authoritative. The hired hand will always promise freedom. When danger comes, he scatters. The thief always sounds persuasive. But Jesus says his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. You know, there's an old saying, there's always cheese in the mousetrap, and it's true, but the cheese is never free. Jesus is the only voice that leads to life. So here is the challenge as we walk out today. Stop pretending to be neutral about the shepherd. This chapter won't allow it. His words and his works force a verdict. And the verdict is revealed by the simplest test of all. Which voices are you actually following? Not the voice you agree with in theory, not the voice you post about, not the voice you grew up around, but the voice that has authority over your choices, your fears, your money, your purity, your relationships, your schedule, your anger, your ambitions, and your whole entire life. And if you hear him calling, and if there's even a faint pull in your heart today, don't harden yourself. Don't hide behind maybe later. Don't use the round to it. Do not use the round to it. Don't keep standing at the edge of the fold debating opinions while the shepherd is speaking. Come through the gate. Follow the shepherd. Because if the thief takes and the hired hand runs, but Jesus gives life to the full. Think about that. One of two choices. But I tell you, if you choose door number one, the hired hand, the thief will kill, destroy, rob, and actually destroy your life. But if you come in through the gate, through Jesus, he will give you life that is abundantly full and amazing, and you will have the joy of the Lord in your heart.